Here, nice good, man.
Thanks. It's 48. 1948 was the vintage year for Harley. It was the year they first rolled out the Panhead. Now, this was the bike to customize. The bike you got to chop, like I did. Now, this bike looks familiar. We have a 42-degree rake, extended forks at the front end, this teardrop gas tank. It's a chopper. Now, we've all heard the term chopper, but actually, riders started using it right after World War II. Returning GIs came back and started chopping things off their bikes to make them lighter. You know, they chop off the headlight, chop off the fenders, hell, they chop off the front brake. Who needed to stop? The whole idea was to make your bike lighter and go faster. But when I designed Captain America here, we had something else in mind. We needed to have a little style. We needed to be cool. But even the idea of cool started in the late 40s. Right about the time this little incident took place that rocked the motorcycle world.
Hollister, California, July 4th, 1947. A motorcycle rally gets out of control. Young riders just back from the war and fed up with orders and discipline get rowdy in the heart of town. Citizens are horrified as the boys drag race down Main Street and spend donuts in front of the local saloon. Life magazine covers the event and sends this picture into every American home. Their report was exaggerated, of course. This photo was even staged by the photographer. But what really happened didn't matter. It's what people believed happened that counted. Overnight, the image of the motorcyclist changed from enthusiast to rebel.
Hey, somebody tell me what that means, BRMC. What does it mean?
Black Rebels Motorcycle Club.
Isn't that cute? Hey, Johnny, what are you rebelling against?
What do you got?
The Wild One introduced a new anti-hero to our culture. A hero that challenged authority. A hero untamed and dangerously physical. A hero with an attitude, the motorcycle rebel.
What's the matter, Kathy? I was only trying to...
We got this town on a rope.
Come on.
Get to work on these boys. Anybody bring a gun for me?
Yeah, here's one.
Phone's dead. You better send somebody for the militia.
The Wild One described a powerful discontent among young motorcyclists. They were rebels just for the sake of being rebels, threatening the very values many of them had just fought to preserve. For middle-class America, this was a shocking, disturbing portrait.
For the people of Northeast Ohio, the future holds 100,000 new homes. Refrigerator doors that open and close by push button.
The Motoramic Chevrolet, with the history-making new turbofire V8 engine.
The U.S. was going through a period of unprecedented prosperity. The country was staid, conservative, proudly satisfied with its affluent society. But this was also the era of rock and roll. There was a new culture in America, youth culture. Teenagers had developed their own identity with their own music, their own fashions, their own idols. And for these young Americans, the status quo wasn't nearly enough.
Supposed to be my buddies on Highway 17. How'd I get there?
Which way are you coming from?
It don't matter which way I'm coming from. It's which way I'm going to.
People talked of a generation gap, of juvenile delinquents. Mainstream society didn't understand these rebels without causes. They couldn't understand their rejection of middle-class values. But for teenagers, this image held a surprising appeal. The motorcycle became synonymous with youth and rebellion.
Do you know who they are?
No, I don't know.
Strange type for this neighborhood. And you stay away from them, young lady.
Three strangers arrive in a small town. Three men in black leather jackets in an empty rented house. We'll call them Steve and Scott and Fred, but their names are not important. Their mission is, as three men on motorcycles lead us into the Twilight Zone.
Most riders didn't know what to make of this negative image. Sure, there were a few troublemakers on bikes. There always had been. But now the tail was wagging the dog. People were being attracted to motorcycling not because they wanted to ride, but because they wanted to be rebels. As seen in this underground cult film, the rebel image began penetrating the highbrow world of art. Here, the motorcyclist is used to symbolize the unconventional, the nonconformist, the one who dares to challenge authority. But in real life, that challenge was mostly in the bikes they rode. The stock Harleys they called dressers or garbage wagons were out. Stripped-down choppers were in. Many Harley dealers wouldn't work on choppers, claiming they were too dangerous to warrant their labor. Others admitted they just didn't want the rebel types hanging around. Bikes had developed a bad connotation. They were for hoods and greasers, not citizens. Perhaps to balance some of this negative publicity, Harley-Davidson began manufacturing golf carts. This was, after all, the Eisenhower administration.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
But when Jack Kennedy entered the White House, the whole mood of the country changed. It was 1960, and people were ready for something different. Steve McQueen didn't fit the 50s image of motorcycling. He was kind of a rebel, kind of a hero, and definitely cool. Bikes were his passion, and after this movie was released, every boy in America wanted one. And there were a lot of boys in America. The baby boomers were coming of age, and motorcycles were in. By the way, that's not Steve making the jump. It's a writer named Bud Ekins. The bike is supposed to be a German BMW, but it's really a British Triumph. Those old Beamers weren't designed to go flying. And McQueen, well, he owned over a dozen Harleys. In fact, he collected them. But we got to tell you the truth now. Old Steve was really an Indian man. Motorcycle sales took off. Foreign manufacturers were bringing a stream of low-cost bikes into the U.S., and the market was exploding. But ironically, Harley-Davidson was in trouble. Makes such as BSA and Honda were not only cheaper, they were perceived as sportier, and in some quarters, more socially acceptable than the heavyweight Harleys. The dressers were seen as old men's bikes, and the choppers, they were for hoods. Harley-Davidson was being saddled with an image it never wanted in the first place. The implication here was that you didn't meet the nicest people on a hog. On top of that, many riders were leaving the highways altogether. Motocross and enduro attracted a huge following. These guys claimed it was safer than running on the road. Right. But Harley had nothing to compete with these machines. And they had nothing to compete with the entry-level bikes coming in from Japan. These were cheap, non-threatening motorcycles for first-time riders, and more importantly, they were non-threatening to their parents. This 1966 industrial film shows just part of one day's production Honda was gearing for the U.S. Yet Harley-Davidson, the only American motorcycle company in the world's biggest motorcycle market, was facing its most serious financial crisis since the Depression.